Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Have History Will Travel. I'm your host, the Wilder historian, Dr. Lucas Wilder, and last time I animated the Battle of Hall's Shop, and this week I'll be moving the Union Army of the Potomac and the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia closer to the Battle of Cold Harbor. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, join the Patreon page, and purchase something from a Teespring store or Etsy shop. Every little bit helps. Thank you. After the Battle of Hall's Shop, Ulysses S. Grant moved his army across the Pamunkey River. Once across the river, Grant wasn't sure where Robert E. Lee's army was. Likewise, Lee was void of information about the Union Army's movements. Union General Philip Sheridan and his cavalry were exhausted from their fight with Confederate cavalry and their raid, so Grant allowed them to rest behind the lines, which deprived the Army of the Potomac of its eyes and ears. Army Commander George Meade had no choice but to send out infantry in force to ascertain the whereabouts of Lee's army. A division from the 2nd, 5th, and 6th Corps moved out to find the Confederate Army. The 6th Corps division headed north, while the other two divisions ran into parts of Lee's army. Light skirmishing broke out along the line, but now Grant knew where Lee's army was positioned. The Army of the Potomac moved out of its defensive line and toward the Army of Northern Virginia. Lee himself was worried about the roads leading to Richmond from the east of his position and sent some of his cavalry to Old Church. Union Corps Commander Gouverneur K. was worried about that cavalry on his left flank and rear and begged Sheridan to clear his flank. After repeated pleading, Sheridan finally moved out to combat the rebel cavalry, sending Alfred Torbert's division to deal with the rebels under Matthew Butler. The Confederate horsemen moved north and came into contact with the 17th Pennsylvania Cavalry of Thomas Devon's brigade. As the two sides engaged, more cavalry entered the fight, throwing volleys at one another from across a creek south of Old Church. The 17th Pennsylvania withdrew to replenish their cartridge boxes, and the 2nd U.S. Cavalry took their place. Repeated attempts to dislodge the South Carolinians ended in failure. While the battle raged, George Armstrong Custer's cavalry brigade made it to the field and added weight to the Union battle line. With the fire intensifying and Union troops overlapping their flanks, the rebels retreated. The 7th South Carolina and the 20th Georgia Cavalry Battalion attempted to hinder the Federal troops, but couldn't withstand the firepower of the repeating rifles possessed by the enemy. Robert E. Lee wasn't willing to give up the avenues into Richmond so easily. Plus, he now knew that Warren's 5th Corps was isolated and could be defeated in detail. Lee maneuvered Richard Ewell's corps, now under Jubal Early since Ewell was ill, toward the Bethesda Church. Samuel Crawford's Union Division occupied the area just around the church. The divisions of Robert Rhodes, Stephen Ramseur, and George Pickett approached the church on May 30th. Brian Grimes' brigade arrived first and attacked Martin Hardin's brigade. Hardin was inexperienced in command, and when the North Carolinians under Grimes assaulted their position, they and Kitching's brigade retreated to a safe location along the Shady Grove Road. At this point, Early halted any advance until the rest of his force could concentrate. Unfortunately for Early, this gave Warren enough time to rush troops to the scene of battle. When Early was ready to attack, elements of 3 Union divisions were on the field. Light skirmishing occurred along the whole line, and the only major attack that took place was when new division commander Stephen Ramseur got his blood up and wanted to attack the Federal line, sending John Pegram's brigade against the Union breastworks. Some of the soldiers remembered, at each successful fire, great gaps were made in our ranks, but immediately closed up, and our line melted away as if by magic. Every brigade, staff, and field officer was cut down in an incredibly short time. A Union soldier remembered, the slaughter was so sickening that Major Hartshorn leaped to his feet and called upon his assailants to surrender. Some hundreds did so. Rebels or no rebels, their behavior and bearing during the charge had won the admiration of their captors, who did not hesitate to express it. The brigade withdrew, and the fight around Bethesda Church was over. The Union lost 731 total, 679 killed and wounded, and 52 captured. The Confederacy lost 1,593 total, 263 killed, 961 wounded, and 369 missing or captured. Lee, Grant, and Meade now skirmished with one another to find out where the battle lines were. Both armies were also getting reinforcements. Confederate General Pierre-Gustave Toutant Beauregard sent Robert Hoke's division from his standoff with Benjamin Butler and his Army of the James at Bermuda Hundred, south of Richmond. Likewise, Butler sent the 18th Army Corps under William Baldy Smith from his Army of the James to Grant's assistance. Smith's corps was at White House, and the information given to Lee about the newly arrived corps led the Confederate Army commander to fear for his right flank. Cold Harbor was a vital crossroads that, if taken by Union forces, would allow Meade and Grant to outflank him and threaten Richmond. To capture the location, Lee sent Hoke's newly arrived division to secure the location and pulled Anderson's corps out of his entrenchments. Then the entire corps headed east to support Hoke's hold on Cold Harbor. Grant and Meade saw the movement of troops to Cold Harbor and pulled Horatio Wright's 6th Corps out of line and ordered it to march to Cold Harbor. Smith and the 18th Army Corps was to move onto Wright's right flank and connect with Warren's 5th Corps, but Smith was told he needed to march to Newcastle Ferry, which was in the wrong direction. Wright's corps began their march a little late, with the last division not leaving until 4:30 a.m. on June 1st. Only the cavalry division of Alfred Torbert occupied the crossroads at Old Cold Harbor. Kershaw and Hoke's division were between Old and New Cold Harbor. Awaiting them was George Armstrong Custer's brigade and Wesley Merritt's brigade. The inexperienced Lawrence Kite, taken over the brigade formerly under John Hennigan, launched his brigade against the Cavaliers without sending out skirmishers, and the results were horrendous, with the South Carolinians taking heavy casualties and Kite himself being mortally wounded. By the time Kershaw reformed Kite's brigade, elements of Horatio Wright's 6th Corps was on the field, securing the Union's hold on the vital crossroads. The campaign would now shift to the south and east, as both Lee and Grant battled over Cold Harbor and the territory to its north.